Last Saturday in Greenville, I went to a church service on pro-life, the right of life. And the preacher shared something with me when he was talking about the tea parties that he was going to be speaking in Greenville just a few days later. And he said this. He said, we need to have a he party, then we need to get on our knees and have a knee party, and then we may form a we party. To come together. I will spend my energy and time promoting the 1st District of South Carolina and working to bring whatever jobs we can bring to this area. From Charleston, which is, I call it the jewel of the South, a beautiful city, historic city, to our bustling Grand Strand. Wide open, many opportunities await us if we embrace many opportunities that face us. If you're looking at job creation, let's get taxes off the burden of small business. Let's eliminate some corporate taxes, possibly encourage the fair tax as an option to our very complicated federal tax structure. These are the 5 commitments I make to you if you honor me by electing me as your congressman. And I close with a couple of things that I want you to remember, is that I try to bring people together rather than separate them. When I first met our opponents in this building here several weeks ago, I met each one of them individually, and I was here first. And I asked them who came with them, their wife or their father, whoever it was, and I wanted to meet them. And I embraced them. I welcomed them to Myrtle Beach. And I told them that I would buy them dinner afterwards. And George, they took me over. All of them said yes. But because the program went over that night, we started at 6:30 and we were still going at 10:30. And they were allowing us to respond to a 5-minute question with a 1-minute answer. But the last person that arrived there that night was one of my opponents named Lutz. And I asked him who came with him. And he shared with me that his father, a 76-year-old father, had driven down from Charleston with him. And I said, where is Mr. Lutz? And he pointed to the very back of this building and said, he's back there. We got here a little bit late. There's no chairs. So I went and made my way back to Mr. Lutz Sr. And I said, Mr. Lutz, I'm going to take you down front with me and we're going to make sure you get a good seat. And I took him to the very front row. I asked Chrisman Howard, who got there early. I said, Chrisman, please give up your seat for Mr. Lutz, because this man has driven 2.5 hours to hear his son talk about running for the Congress of the United States, and he needs to have a front row seat. And Chrisman gave up that seat. After our meeting, Mr. Lutz, the candidate, came over to me. He said, Clark, he said, you made some brownie points for my dad. He said, you have moved up to number 2 on his list. I said, thank God it didn't make number 1. He might have a problem going home. But when we leave this race, we're going to have some friends, because our fall and our fight is in the fall with the Democrats, not with the Republicans. Right? We are together, right? And I'll share one other thing. When I ran for the Board of Trustees at Coastal Carolina, when I contacted Tom Keegan, who was my House member, I said, Tom, I want to run for the Board of Trustees. He said, Clark, he said, it's a terrible process. We might not be able to get you through it. He said, once you run for the House and run against me, and I'll get you elected. But he was right. It's a terrible process. In the 1st Congressional District, there were 5 candidates, 1 fielded from each part of the counties: Horry, Georgetown, Dorchester, Berkeley, and Charleston. And 1 candidate was from Charleston County. And as the delegations are made up, there are 27 delegation members out of Charleston County versus 9 out of Horry. So my odds were 3-1 against me that the delegate from Charleston would probably win that contest. But what I did is I went and got all the resumes of these various candidates. And I realized this was a very valid as well as very prominent and a very deserving candidate. So I called her, who was teaching at the Medical University of South Carolina. and she had moved there from Indiana. And she did not know the political process in South Carolina, which was very bad. And I asked her, I said, do you know the process? She said, no, I sent my resume in and filled out the forms. I said, that's not the process. It's not what you know, but it's who you know to get elected to one of these seats. And she said, I don't know anybody. I said, you're in trouble, but let me tell you what you need to do. Before you leave your office today, call your House member and you call your senator, and you tell them you want to run for the Board of Trustees at Coastal Carolina. And you tell them why you want to run. And you tell them to go ahead and contact those other 26 members of your delegation and encourage them to support you for this run. She said, Clark, why are you trying to help me? I said, because I am a student and a graduate of Coastal Carolina University. I want people around that table making decisions to be the best they can be. And I want the best candidates to be at that table. And out of the other candidates besides myself, you're the most qualified. And you should be there if I can't get there. So I'm going to help you in case I can't. So I met her in Columbia 2 days later, and I met her in this little place called the lobby between these two houses, where all the lobbyists hang out, right? And I introduced her to the 9 delegates from Horry. And my introduction went like this. If you can't help me get elected, you need to help this lady get elected. And they all agreed they would. And what she did basically the same thing I did. She went back home that night and looked at all our resumes and gave me a call the next day. She said, Clark, I'm going to have to yield because I think you're the best candidate, and I'll support you. That's how we operate. That's how I've operated all my life. Above the table, straight up, the facts and circumstances drive the issues. And the issues in our country are so great, we need people up there that care about what's going on in our country, not what's going on in their own personal lives. Because a lot of times we send people up there that care all about them and not about us. And that's who they got to represent. They need to represent us. And if you send me to Washington, I will represent you and us. Thank you, and God bless you for being here.